The concept of a shared fictional universe is an extremely exciting method of bringing your favorite storylines and characters together and tying it all into one. Individually, these storylines and characters partake in incredible adventures. But when you mix them all up and realize everything is interconnected, well, then it becomes epic. Hello and welcome to another round of Digital Coin Op. This is Downloader Review Episode 4. Today we'll be focusing on The King of Fighters 98, the Slugfest. But enough about that, let's play. In 1994, the first King of Fighters game made its mark with the appropriately titled The King of Fighters 94. This game brought in new characters, as well as existing characters from existing properties like The Art of Fighting, Fatal Fury, Ikari Warriors, and Psycho Soldier. Art of Fighting and Fatal Fury already had a connection before this title released, as the storyline in Art of Fighting was a direct prequel to Fatal Fury. Not only were those two franchises connected, but the King of Fighters tournament existed in their fiction before the King of Fighters 94 was even released. We'll briefly touch upon the history of this title a little bit later, but let me talk about this mobile port. What you are seeing here at the moment is the Android version of the King of Fighters 98. The great thing about this game is that it gives you all sorts of options for input, from touch controls to various controllers that can be used with it. Some of these controllers that are featured here are a bit outdated, as there have been several new Bluetooth controllers that have come along to challenge the older ones. But fortunately, this game allows you to change the button layout to whatever input method you have chosen. There are also video options, but we'll get into those later as well. Now, as you can see here, when you first begin the game, it gives you a brief tutorial on the two gauges that are available to play with and how to use them. You have Advanced and Extra. The big difference between the two is being able to charge up your special attacks, and the other one makes you build upon it in order to activate it. On the character select screen, you are tasked with which gauge type you would like to use, as well as selecting your team of 3. You have 38 fighters to choose from. All of the teams that exist within the fictional canon of the storyline are next to each other. What I mean is every 3 characters featured together make up one of the teams, but you as a player have the ability to make up your own teams. The game also has the option to play multiplayer with Bluetooth, but you'd want to choose that from the menu before you initiate a match. There is also training from the menu as well. From that menu, of course, you have settings, leaderboards, and achievement descriptions. The screen we're seeing right now is letting the player choose the order in which the fighters will take on their opponents. Our first match consists of Shermie versus Kensu. Kensu is part of the Psycho Soldiers team. Everyone on that particular team has some sort of psychic ability and are trained by Chin. Kensu, up to this point in the KOF storyline, doesn't have a lot to do, but he will later. His first appearance was in Psycho Soldier, released internationally in 1987. We see him again in the post-apocalyptic RPG, Crystalis. Shermie, on the other hand, is an original character that was introduced in the King of Fighters 97. It was an integral part of the Orochi saga. This saga was a storyline between KOF 95 to 97. Shermie belongs to the New Face team. Her importance comes from the fact that her team are part of the 4 Heavenly Kings of Orochi, a major catalyst in the story. Since we just saw one round go down, if you have never played the King of Fighters, this is how the battle roles go. Your team faces against another team of 3. Whichever character gets knocked out is out of the match. The remaining character stays for the next round. And at this point, the remaining character will also recover a small bit of health. The goal here is to beat the other team's 3 fighters. Once that happens, the match is over. Next character on the battlefield is Athena. Athena also debuted in Psycho Soldier, but is rumored to be a distant relative and modern-day counterpart of another heroine, also named Athena, that had a game by the same name, which debuted in 1986. Athena is a pop singer with a large base of fans, but she is also a disciple of Chin, who enters the tournament to train for future threats. Next on the roster is one of SNK's biggest stars, and could possibly be seen as their mascot, Terry Bogard. Terry is the main protagonist of the Fatal Fury series and brother to Andy Bogard. This character has had a long history with the King of Fighters tournament, since Geese Howard, the originator of the tournament, had killed his adoptive father, Jeff Bogard. Terry has been in every iteration of the King of Fighters and heads up the Fatal Fury team that has had changes to its roster over the years, but Terry is a constant. Now we have Chin, who we've talked about as being the teacher to Kensu and Athena. He uses the tournaments to train their potential and their psycho powers. Unlike his pupils, however, his first appearance was in the King of Fighters 94. He came about from the desire of the developers to create a character that was an elderly, drunken-style master. I'd say they pulled it off. Iori is one of the most popular characters in the King of Fighters, and was created for the purpose of being the enemy to the series protagonist, Kyo, for the 95 edition. I wouldn't exactly call him a villain, but he is definitely a dark character, with lines that he speaks being translated to as, "You think I'm scary, do you?" and "You cry, you scream, then you die." His purpose through the Orochi Saga would also have a major impact in his handling of situations with other characters who would go on to create rivalries and enemies. The character on the right, Joe Higashi, is a fan favorite that has been around since the first Fatal Fury was introduced in 1992. He is often portrayed as comic relief and is a very lovable character. He is also the world Muay Thai champion. Often seen in the company of the Bogard brothers, Joe is definitely one of the most recognizable faces in the fighting game genre. Survivor of the last round is Benny Maru, a human Pikachu. Not really, but he does share electrical attacks like his adorable rodent counterpart. Benny Maru is part of the hero team for this particular year in the tournament, but in earlier iterations he was part of the Japan team along with Kyo and Goro Diamond. When there was a tournament to decide who would represent Japan in the King of Fighters, Benny Maru lost to Kyo, but became his teammate due to him being second. Don't think that doesn't faze him though, as he trains to rematch Kyo someday. His hair is constantly standing up due to electrostatic powers. As well as being a professional fighter, he is also a professional model. Rounding out the last member of the Fatal Fury team is Andy Bogard, a dangerous opponent who boasts a very powerful moveset. After the death of Jeff Bogard, Andy and Terry's adoptive father, Andy heads to Japan to train in the Shirinui-style ninja technique, and comes back a decade later to reunite with his brother, where then he meets Joe, and they all strike out together to take on Geese Howard. Alright, let's take a break from character introductions for a little bit, and talk about this particular game. The King of Fighters 98 does not take place in the canon storyline. This entry is only meant to be a special edition or a dream match. As a matter of fact, the port of this game on PlayStation and Dreamcast was labeled the King of Fighters 99 Dream Match, not to be confused with the canonical King of Fighters 99. What makes it special is that all characters that have only one appearance or appear dead in the storyline come back, so therefore you have all the fighters from the King of Fighters 94 all the way to 97. Game basically served as a break between sagas, as you have the Orochi Saga from 95 to 97, and then the Ness Saga that began in KOF 99 Millennium Match until KOF 2001. Next on the roster is Billy Kane, one of the former main antagonists of the Fatal Fury series. You see, Billy would become the right-hand man of main villain Geese Howard. Geese had adopted Billy and his sister Lily as young teenagers on the streets of London after seeing Billy's proficiency with a bow. Arcade purists, you may want to avert your eyes now. What we have here are the video options, where you can choose to emulate an old CRT with scan lines, or as you see right now, we can widen the screen from the Arcade Original's 4:3 aspect ratio to 16:9. The team we are seeing at the moment is the Ikari team. The one with the bandana is Ralph Jones, star of TNK3, Iron Tank. It would later appear in the Metal Slug series. Of course, that's not to mention Ikari Warriors, where his partner Clark Still was introduced in 1986. The Ikari games were basically a shot at the top-down run-and-gun shooters at the time. With just a dash of Rambo, these characters were born. However, in the United States, we knew the characters as Paul and Vince instead. Rounding out the Ikari team is Leona. Introduced in the King of Fighters 96, Leona is another character that is tied in closely into the Orochi saga. Hydern, commander of the Ikari Warriors, found her alone and confused in the jungle, and of course adopted her. There seems to be a lot of this adoption stuff going around with the story. The reason she was in the jungle is actually a bit of a long story, without going into too much detail on all the other characters that have a stake in the Orochi saga. But, to make the story kind of short, she hails from an Orochi bloodline. Another character enacted the Riot of the Blood Ritual, and she went into a state where she slaughtered everyone in her village. But she has no memory of this. Next up is another famous character that is instantly recognizable in fighting game circles. This is Mai Shiranui. That last part of her name may seem familiar from earlier on in this video, as Andy had gone to train under the Shiranui style ninja technique. Andy's teacher was Mai's grandfather, who Mai herself also trained under. In time, Mai grew to fall in love with Andy, but nothing has really come from that yet. Mai first appeared in Fatal Fury. Now we have King, who first appeared in the Art of Fighting and is part of the women's team. 5 years before Art of Fighting actually begins, King had suffered a defeat by one of the main villain's syndicate members, and therefore she was forced into servitude as a bouncer for him. Besides iOS, Android, and Steam, this game can also be found in the King of Fighters collection, the Orochi Saga, found on PS2, PSP, and Wii. And as a matter of fact, this game was also remade in 2008 for the arcades as the King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match, which was later released on PS2 in 2009. King of Fighters was a hit for several reasons, but one of them was because all of a sudden the series became a hub to expand the rest of the SNK universe. One of the things they had to do, however, to make this work is create an alternate timeline. But what is a bit confusing is that none of the previous backstories change. The main reason they did this, though, is so they wouldn't have to age the Art of Fighting characters, so they could appear along modern characters. As stated earlier, Art of Fighting was a prequel to Fatal Fury that took place about 10 to 15 years before then. According to the story, the original King of Fighters tournament was hosted in 1979, and that was Art of Fighting 2. The reason I say this was a hub is because you could have characters, for example, from Ikari Warriors that really had no relation, like Ralph and Clark, in the overall scheme of the story. But their commander, Hydern, was a big turning point, as they were commanded to investigate Geese Howard. Because of that simple fit into the story, Hydern then later found Leona, who eventually became a major player in the saga, as well as Hydern having a new backstory constructed of Rugal Bernstein, the villain of the 95 tournament. Remember that Hydern was not even a playable character in Ikari Warriors. His first appearance was in the third NES Sports intro. But here he is now, along with Leona, and all of a sudden this team has a storyline. And because of these events, now these characters can appear in Metal Slug and other SNK franchises, because of the story that was woven into the fabric of the SNK universe. One of the cool features in this port, depending on your point of view, is a wheel that gives you different prizes when you continue to try and make the next match a bit easier. Goro Daemon is a martial artist who is a master of judo, and it shows. He's an Olympic gold medalist in judo. His debut was in the King of Fighters 94 as part of the Japan team, as he took 3rd place in the Japanese mixed martial artist tournament behind Kyo and Benimaru. Every member of this team has an elemental gimmick. Kyo has fire, Benimaru has electricity or lightning, and Goro has earth. Earth? Yep. Just watch what happens when he pounds on the ground. Okay, watch closely. Notice that when he pounds on the ground, not only does he make his opponent fall, but any other bystanders in the vicinity, like my team right now. Did you notice the pot shake? Let's go back for a second. Alright, one of the things I love about this game is the detail that's given in it. So of course, here we are. Let's replay it. Pounds on the ground. Benimaru falls, Andy falls, and so does Kim. But as you can see in the background, his team, Kyo and Benimaru, are still watching. They already know it's coming, so they preload their jumps and jump ahead of time. This attention to detail is one of the things I do love about this game. Speaking of attention to detail, look at this interaction between the two rivals, Iori and Kyo. And now check out Iori's reaction to his defeat. Well, man, calm down. Mention this little part with Billy. Blue Mary was first introduced in Fatal Fury 3, Road to the Final Victory, as a private detective. How she ended up in the King of Fighters was because of this very job. A mysterious benefactor. Come on, is there any other type? Enlisted her services to join the King of Fighters tournament and join up with Billy and Yamazaki. Billy was there by Geese Howard to collect data on the Orochi power. Let's just say after some crazy business went down, Mary was left to figure out what Geese's true intentions really are. Here we have Ryuji Yamazaki. This guy is a full-on psychopath. An insane persona emerged when his surrogate father, a Yakuza crime lord, was killed by a rival gang. Well, he was tortured and killed. Part of the reason for this extreme breakdown is that he was orphaned as a child in Okinawa. This was a time when American troops were always patrolling the city. It wasn't until he met his surrogate father that he truly became happy. After what happened to the crime lord, his surrogate father, he became a very powerful broker and arms dealer. Additionally, he is a Hikeshu, an inherited servant of Orochi. But for some reason, he has no interest in any of this. He, however, wields the power of death. This is most definitely a bad guy. So, stay away. Ryuji also debuted in Fatal Fury 3, but you would encounter him in that game as a sub-boss. Well, speaking of criminals, this little guy with claws is Choi. First introduced in the King of Fighters 94. This guy was a late-night predator that went after the wrong prey. He went after the reigning Taekwondo champion, Kim Kapwan. Kim is a fanatic in justice and forced Choi to join his rehabilitation project. The other criminal that is part of Kim's rehabilitation project is Chang. When Chang escaped prison, he was caught by Kim and was inducted into the project, so Kim, Chang, and Choi all make up the Korean team. Chang and Choi have tried to escape before, but are always foiled. In the end, though, the two have mellowed out and the rehabilitation project was deemed a success. And now we come upon the American sports team, originally the USA team in 94. This team has only been seen twice. Once in King of Fighters 94, and of course for 98, since it is a non-canon dream match. Lucky Glauber, the basketball player, was asked by Heavy D, the boxer, to join in the King of Fighters tournament. Lucky went with it and fuses his basketball playing with karate. This character was modeled after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the Bruce Lee film Game of Death. The other entrant asked by Heavy D to join him is Brian Battler, who has a violent tendency and loves to tackle, well, everyone. Then finally there is Heavy D, who was expelled from normal boxing competitions due to seriously injuring another fighter. This poor team gets invited back to King of Fighters, but every time they do, some other team beats them and takes their invitations. For example, for the 97 tournament, the new face team had been disqualified from joining the King of Fighters since they had missed their opportunities in the preliminaries. Instead, they assaulted the sports team and took their invitations. This has since been a recurring joke in the series. Uh-oh. This cutscene is telling me that we are nearing the end of the game, but I haven't really had a chance to dive into the story. This is, after all, a very lengthy story to tell, and may be better served in a future video. Perhaps a review of the King of Fighters 97, where the Orochi saga actually ends. But before you go, there's still one more fighter to face, and I still haven't really reviewed this video game yet either. With that said, the controls in this game are tight and responsive, but if you come from the Capcom school of fighting, you may find quite the learning curve. But in the end, getting to know the game is ultimately worth it. King of Fighters is a premier fighting series that endures to this day, with the last iteration being released last year on the PS4, the King of Fighters 14. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the match we're seeing here. Rugal versus Hyadern. Hyadern has every right to want to destroy this guy. Back in 1986, Rugal killed an entire base full of soldiers, and only Hyadern survived, but lost his eye in the process. Rugal was disappointed by this, and decided to kill Hyadern's wife and child. Rugal is one of the worst villains. Not only is he ruthless, but he has an obsession with preserving those he defeats in liquid metal as trophies. Rugal is also feared in the political and fighting worlds, as he does his business aboard his own aircraft carrier, dubbed the Black Noah. He is an arms dealer, and was granted Orochi power when he was younger. His want of testing out his power is how Hyadern's comrades all met their untimely demise. Rugal was given this power by surviving a one-strike attack from Gonetz that caused Rugal to lose his eye, but Gonetz was impressed and gave him some power. Rugal was the organizer for the King of Fighters 94 tournament, where he had seemed to have perished at the end by the hands of the Japan team. However, because of his power, he survived, outfitted himself with further cybernetic parts besides his eye, and organized it again the following year. Again, he was defeated by Kyo and company. So Rugal had been told never to use the Orochi power to capacity, or it would kill him. So infatuated with winning, he tried it and exploded from the inside. Alright, like I said before, this title in the series has no impact on the canonical storyline of the King of Fighters story. But as stated earlier, I'd like to go more in depth on perhaps another video where we can explore this amazing series further. And of course, let's not forget about the greater SNK universe, where the further the stories go, the more it branches out onto other properties and begins to affect them. Of course, this all depends on which timeline we're talking about. Just within Fatal Fury, there's more than one timeline. Same goes for the King of Fighters with their Maximum Impact spin-off. Looks like that concludes our downloader review of The King of Fighters 98. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up. And if you'd like to be kept up to date on new content from Digital Coin Op, please consider subscribing, and please feel free to leave a comment. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I really, really do.